Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. As you know, if you're registered in my class, you know I'm Professor Alice Papazian, and I've been teaching this CL 112 class for the last 15 years. And we've had a wonderful time because we've had some of the most important people in the fashion industry come and give of themselves to you. And those of you who are here today, please, I would like it if you would stop talking and listening. It's not nice. Because this is for you, for your future, and it's important. I want to remind you once again, your field trips are due by May 5th, and I don't want you to wait and hand in 5 on May 5th. Please keep handing them in as you go, as some of you have been doing and have mounted it correctly. I want to compliment you that you did pay attention and noticed how it's supposed to be presented. And your final exam, I've repeated, and you've made note, remember, is May 12th. And the details of how it will be given, I will tell you by May 5th. I will give you written instructions for your test, and it'll be 20 multiple choice questions. Okay, multiple choice, 20 questions. And make notes, I keep repeating. You can have conversations with your next door colleague, your friend after, but make notes of the guest speaker's lecture. And that's all we have for CL 112. And if there are any questions, you know room A639, which is on your, if you've lost your course outline, come to room A639. We have other copies we can give you, because it's important you follow the instructions. And now I'm very anxious. We have a guest who's here all the way from Los Angeles, California, to speak to you. And I want to give you a background, a little introduction of why you should be very honored and very privileged to have this guest speaker, Mr. Michael Steinberg. As I said, it's a great privilege and a pleasure to meet and hear from one of fashion industry's geniuses in merchandising and marketing, and to learn from him. Listen. He's a gift to us today. Mr. Steinberg retired as chairman and CEO of Macys West, a company that he built into a $4 billion division, profits, and it's a division of Federated Department Stores. Macys, California, Macys West, California. He's a true visionary. He created unprecedented sales and profits. Mr. Steinberg began his career in retailing at Federated. Currently, he is an international development consultant for Macys, which of course is part of Federated. They are very fortunate, I say, to have him, because in today's world, men with his kind of approach to marketing, merchandising is very rare. Some of the philanthropies that Mr. Steinberg is very dedicated to are, one, the Jewish Museum, which is on your list. You should go visit. They have fantastic exhibitions. The DFS, which is the duty-free stores, division of LVMH, and he also is active in ARI, AIDS Research Institution. He holds degrees from the University of Natal in South Africa. This is a rare opportunity to have in your midst the style of dedication and talent in using creativeness of mind and spirit rather than using the electronic aids. So take advantage and ask questions that are indicative of your interest and dedication to your fashion ambition and career for your future in design or merchandising or marketing. And now I am most anxious to ask Mr. Steinberg to come up to the podium so I can hear what wonderful things he's going to tell you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With an introduction like that, I always think it begins to sound a little like an obituary, you know.
No.
So I wanted to tell you a little bit about my background. It's not the usual retailing background, because I started my college experiences were in horticulture. I studied, and in fact, in an agricultural school and specialized in horticulture, because at that time I was interested in subsequently owning and running a nursery and landscaping business, which I did for a few years, as a matter of fact, on Long Island. So, and from there I went into retailing, and got a job at what was then Abraham and Straus, which today is part of Macys. I worked at, is this okay? Can you hear me? I'm sorry. Is this better? Okay. I worked at Abraham and Straus, which was a department store, now part of Macys. It still exists, and except when I was there, it was headquartered in Brooklyn, and I became a department manager, and subsequently left and became an owner of my own business, as I said, a nursery and landscaping business, and. At some point in time, I sold that business and decided to go back into retailing. And make a long story short, I ended up at Macys in California, and I spent 7-8 years as the CEO of Macys West. Need to tell you a little bit about department store retailing, or retailing in general. And one of the negatives is it is not a 40-hour-a-week job. I don't know how many of you think it is, but it isn't. Stores are open 7 days a week, 18 hours a day, and what is sometimes billed as a 40-hour week is the reality of it is it isn't. It's hard work. And you have to be prepared to put in, if you're going into retailing, you have to be prepared to put in the time and the effort. And as I said, it sometimes takes a little more than advertised. So I think that's important to know, because I think sometimes you go into something and you suddenly 3 months or 4 months into the job, you recognize the fact that this is not exactly what you wanted, because it requires that much more effort and time. So before you decide, if any of you are going to, on a career in retailing, think it over, talk to a few people. There are always people that are willing to talk to you, whether it's people at Macys or Bloomingdale's or anywhere else for that matter, that'll tell you what it is really like and what's expected of you. What determines the success in retailing? And what I've done here is sort of given you talk about a few of the legends in retailing. And by the way, the introduction was wonderful, but I'm not a legend in retailing. I was a decent retailer. I did my job. But these people I'm going to talk about were iconic. They were icons in retelling. And first one I've put down is Stanley Macys. Stanley Macys is an individual who really is responsible for today's image of Neiman Marcus. He is the one that really took that store from a regional department store headquartered in Dallas, Texas, and made it an international icon. Stanley Macys is truly, he's still alive, I think. Yes, he's still alive. He must be well into his 80s, and he is truly a legend and took that store really into a worldwide known icon. The next person is less well known. It's a person I've put down called Jed Davidson. Jed Davidson is responsible for what Bloomingdale's is today. At one time, Bloomingdale's was like a five and dime. It had a basement, a bargain basement, and then something happened. On 3rd Avenue, there was an elevated train. There was an L. And when the L was pulled down, suddenly that part of town became a fashion area. It wasn't before. That part of town became fashionable. And Bloomingdale's was always there. Bloomingdale's was very much a five and dime store. And Jed Davidson was the one who had the vision to turn Bloomingdale's into a fashion icon. So he's another one of my heroes, if you like, in retailing. The third person I've put down on my list, and this is a select list, there are many, many others, was Marvin Traub. I worked for Marvin Traub. Marvin Traub was a chairman of Bloomingdale's when I joined Bloomingdale's 15 years ago. Is it 15 years? 20, I'm sorry. 20 years ago. And Marvin Traub was one of those people who had a tremendous vision. You could travel with Marvin Traub anywhere in the world, and you knew instantly where to go, where to shop, what were the best restaurants, what were the most important cultural things that you had to see. He was really, truly a great mentor and a great teacher. And I think he, more than anything, was the person that took Bloomingdale's really to the next level. The next person I want to talk about is Mickey Drexler. And I don't know do any of you know who Mickey Drexler is? Okay. Mickey Drexler is really the reason that Gap is what it is today, and he's doing the same thing with J. Crew. Mickey Drexler is another one of those people who can see ahead, who is a visionary, not a dyed-in-the-wool retailer, but somebody who thinks ahead and has really took the Gap from nothing into a very, very important national store, and is doing the same thing with J. Crew. And the last person I wanted to talk about was Ed Finkelstein. Ed Finkelstein is really recreated Macy's. There's a wonderful word we use in retailing called reinvent, and I have to tell you, it's a very much overused word. But if anybody reinvented anything, it was Ed Finkelstein, who really took Macy's to the next level. And he did it in a very unusual way. Instead of doing what people do today and go into the fashion areas, the ready-to-wear areas, all the apparel areas, and make a mark in those areas, Ed Finkelstein did it in a different way. He took home furnishings as a lead, and he took the lowly housewares department, which used to be a pot and pan department, and created the cellar, first in New York and then in California. And the cellar really was the instrument, the spark, that really made the difference in a Macy's store. So here was a guy who really took home furnishings, which you don't think of as fashion, as couture, but Finkelstein used the cellar, the development of the cellar, and to make housewares and home products a very, very, very important part of the store. I want to talk a little bit about a couple of other things. Two companies that come to mind that are worth looking at. One is Crate and Barrel. Crate and Barrel, and all of you have been to a Crate and Barrel, I'm sure. Crate and Barrel started in a very small store in Chicago and built into the chain it is today. But it isn't the size of the company, because this company is a large company today. But it's really what he did with the categories of merchandise he chose as his vehicle. He chose the tabletop area, china, silver, glass, and part of housewares, and used those in a very forward way. For those, and he started in a small store, and then he took a rather larger store on Michigan Avenue in Chicago. That was his second store, and of course now he's all over the country. And Gordon Siegel is another one of what I call visionaries. We've talked about Ed Finkelstein, we've talked about Jed Davidson, we've talked about Stanley Marcus, Mickey Drexler, but Gordon Siegel is also one of those iconic people who have really done a tremendous amount of work in elevating the categories of merchandise that they dealt with to the next level. And again, a couple of companies that I've chosen, I've talked about Crate and Barrel before, but I can't really talk about them enough because they've done such a wonderful job in the field of fashion, in the field of bringing home furnishings, bringing their products at very, very good prices to an inordinately large number of people. One other company that I put down as iconic is Izakaya. How many of you have been to Izakaya? I should ask, has there anybody not been to Izakaya? Because there is one in New Jersey. I think the nearest one is New Jersey. And if you haven't been there, it is worth going. This is a company that started off in Stockholm, in Sweden, by someone who was very entrepreneurial and who has really built an empire. Tremendous prices, tremendous products, well designed, well chosen, very edited, very select. And one of the things that I enjoy doing once in a while when we're looking for new stuff for the home, I go to Izakaya. I should go to Macy's, I get a discount there. But first I go to Izakaya to see what they have. Izakaya is well worth studying, well worth looking at. If for those of you who haven't been there, I urge you to go there and shop and take a look at the way they've edited and selected the merchandise. That's a lesson in how to build a business. The last example I've put down is Ralph Lauren. Ralph Lauren is more than, by the way, Ralph Lauren started his career, I don't know, does everybody know that? Started his career at Bloomingdale's. Ralph Lauren has taken his fashion, and with the latest foray into JCPenney with what is called the American experience, I urge you, if you haven't been to a JCPenney recently, to go to JCPenney and look at, in quotes, American experience merchandise, which comes out of the Ralph Lauren world. This is tremendous. It's a tremendous array of products. It's well priced. It's beautifully designed. I saw it last week in Dallas. I must say, it's just come on the market, so it's something you can look at. I think it's very timely that you go and shop it now. And it's beautifully designed. It's very Americana, it's very affordable, it's well priced, and it's called the American Experience. I thought I'd talk to you a little bit about trends, and by the way, while I'm talking, would you all start thinking about questions you might like to ask, because I don't have very much more to say, and I'm relying on you to ask questions, because I've told them I'll be here an hour. So if you don't keep me here an hour by asking questions, it's your fault. Okay. Some examples of trends that I just put down with the help of my wife. Just looks, the Annie Hall look. Those of you who've seen, how long, is that 20 years old now, 15 years old? You can get it on DVD. How many of you have seen Annie Hall? The rest of you should get the movie. It's very, very good. But the Annie Hall look. And then I've put down a few names: grunge, bling, a jewelry influenced fashion area, fashion trend, and retro looks, which are always, I think, important. So I think the only thing I haven't said that is always a trend in fashion is color. When I was at Bloomingdale's and subsequently, we'd get these color charts. What is the latest in colors? And that come from some place in New York. Do you issue them too? Yeah. And it's very, very important. Obviously, it's always going to be important. Color influences everything, and color is really, it's a mandate that you should always look at the latest color trends. And the other thing that has become important are the whole area of ethnic looks. What are the influences of fashion? Where do ideas come from? Well, actually, they come from everywhere. They come from everywhere. I used to love going to Europe and looking at the stuff in France, all the trends that come out of various parts of Europe. Currently, one of the places where I think that are very interesting, which is always very fashion forward, is Berlin. If you ever go to Berlin, there's so much happening there. But France continues to be important. And the other area that I think has been very influential is Japan. If you look at all these schoolgirl looks, etc., that most of those originated in Japan. So all the influences of fashion come from somewhere. Some certainly originate in this country. But as many as originate here, so many of them come from other places. So I think with that, I'd like to know if you have, some of you, I hope you have some questions for me, and open the floor for that. Please.
You mentioned Ralph Lauren, and I knew he was a master of fashion marketer and not the designer, but who does the design for him?
I think the ideas, the thrusts, really do start with him. Obviously, I don't think he sits there and does all the colorations and does all the sketches. Yeah.
He said he can't draw for means, he doesn't do anything, and he basically just is presented with a bunch of designs from other designers.
Yeah, but don't sell him short. He's a master. He's a master at what he does. Here's a guy who, by the way, started off selling ties at Bloomingdale's. At Brooks Brothers? Okay. Brooks Brothers. So, you know, he has obviously taken trends. He certainly understands marketing. He certainly understands the thrusts of retailing. I don't think he's ever pretended to be a person who draws and creates the fashion directly. But he's certainly the inspiration. And that becomes important. Yes, absolutely. Who else?
You were talking about Grant Merrill and just the way that
I think that Crate and Barrel has had an enormous influence in department stores. When I was at Macy's West, we would make special trips to Chicago to look at what Crate and Barrel were doing and what thrust and what direction they were taking. He had the ability, Gordon Siegel, to go to Europe, to go to Eastern Europe and look at a glass factory and pick out the 3 or 4 things he wanted. I think his genius was the fact that he was a wonderful editor. He could find something that was iconic, that he thought would sell well, and he really could take that and make an enormous business out of it. So he had a wonderful eye, and that's important. We haven't talked about that. What many of these people that I talked about had in common is they had a wonderful eye. There's nobody really that has invented a new trend. New trends emerge from something else. It's seeing something and seeing the possibilities of what you can do with a particular product and taking it to the next level. Okay, you want? Yes. Yeah, we should, maybe I should bring that in over here. Could you take it over there? Thank you.
I'll take it.
Got it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay, I was asking, what was your biggest turning point getting into the fashion field, like a fashion industry? Because it's I remember you said you studied in agriculture, and then Macy's totally. I mean, maybe there's some connections, but a lot of people think it's a lot of different things together. It's like,
Come near the stage.
Yeah, it was still retailing. I mean, the fact is that having a retail business, whether you're selling sheets or whether you're selling underwear, it doesn't make very much difference. You're selling, you're merchandising, you're marketing, and it didn't really make that much difference. So, I mean, from running a retail store that was selling plants is not all that different from selling anything else. You get into the field of merchandising. Yes. I'll tell you truthfully, the two can merge, and that's when you think about what you want to do. Recognize the fact that you may specialize in one field, but at some point when you go further along, those two elements can merge. They can be one. Whether it's it can happen in any retail field. It can happen in food. There's a wonderful store in France called Carrefour. How many of people here have ever been to France and seen a Carrefour? They are better than, somebody's going to shoot me for this, but they are so much better at what they do than Walmart. Because at the very ground level, They put fashion into their stores, they put fashion into the merchandise, whether it's food, whether it's the little bit of apparel they carry, and they don't do that particularly well, but it's virtually everything else. And they're terrific. And I wish we had a Carrefour in this country. Anybody else?
No more questions? Yes.
Looking at today's retail landscape with Walmarts, Kmart's, and so on, as well as specialty stores, like Secrets, Trading Barrel, what do you see for what we would have called a traditional department store? What do you see as the vision for that?
Well, you know, the popular nomenclature is that the department store business is dead. I think that's silly. I think there have been consolidations and possibly too many consolidations. But they've occurred, and they've occurred in all parts of industry in our country. They've occurred everywhere. So it's a fact of life. But in that, there's still excellence around. And it's harder to look for. It's much more difficult to create a fashion platform in a JCPenney. Why? 400 stores, whatever the number of stores they have. It's too difficult to roll out and implement. So the small specialty store becomes far more important, and shopping those specialty stores, that's why I keep coming back to a Crate and Barrel, but it doesn't have to be a Crate and Barrel, it can be a Pottery Barn, it can be any one of those stores. You have to look at those stores and look at what value they can bring, because to implement fashion change in a JCPenney today is much more difficult. You have to roll it out to too many stores. The testing is very complex. It's very complex to test in a company that's that big. Now, I'm sure the people at JCPenney would disagree with that. But the same applies to department stores. That's why a store like Bloomingdale's, a store like Neiman Marcus is so important, because they are small enough, the scale is small enough for them to be able to develop the kind of new looks and the fashion, and then the whole arena of specialty stores. I mean, one of the wonderful things when you come from the West Coast here is walk around Soho. There's so many small retailers with great ideas that have come up with concepts that can be translated for the biggest stores. Shopping Soho, I'm sure many of you do that constantly, is a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Who else?
Mr. Steinberg, what do you think of the influence of the Walmarts and the Targets, and what's the other one? What do you think that has done to the department store world and retail world?
Well, first of all, it's not a negative. I have to tell you that a Walmart, if you go to a small store, whether it's in Arkansas or whether any part of the country which has a small community of 50,000 people, and a Walmart opens there, it's a blessing for those people, because they've reduced prices. Yes, they've put some mama papas out of business, but the mama papas were never going to be the fashion people. So what they've done is reduce prices and make shopping affordable. So I am not one of those people who thinks Walmart is a plague and they've hurt retailing. I don't think they have hurt retailing. I think Target, on the other hand, is a little bit more forward. It's a little bit more forward, and I give them a lot of credit for introducing new ideas and doing it on a vast scale. It's in the huge litany of stores.
I love Targets.
Target has a very good approach and very good company to work for. Who else? Let me try to. Is the question of how do you enter the field at your age now? Is that the question?
No, she said, when you were her age, what did you want to be?
A chef. I wanted to be a chef. My parents reminded me of the fact that I'd have to work hard in the kitchen, 18 hours a day, and Saturdays and Sundays, so I didn't become a chef. But I still enjoy cooking, and sometimes I'm sorry that I didn't become a chef.
The idea is that in his life, as you presented it, you could start out, as you said, you love cooking, and then you went into farm.
Yes.
And famous retail also.
Oh, famous.
You did. I've heard all about it.
You,
I was wondering, like, you work in the East Coast,
in what?
East Side, like, in the Eastern areas, in New York, Washington. I know you work at the West.
Yeah, I started here at Abraham and Straus. I started enough for 7-8 years. I was a buyer at Abraham and Straus.
Yeah, so what was like a difference working East and West?
You know, I have to tell you, there isn't a heck of a lot of difference. The seasons are different. You have to make adjustments for seasonal. I mean, we don't sell as much heavy coats. We don't sell snow boots and things like that. We don't sell as much winter gear. But there really isn't, when you come to home furnishings, when you come to cosmetics, when you come to accessories, the trend here is the trend there. It isn't that different. And once something starts, whether it starts on the East Coast, whether it starts on the West Coast, it moves very quickly.
There was a question up there. Yes.
I was going to ask, can you tell us about the foundations that you're involved in and that you have?
The foundations.
I just said on that paper,
On the poster.
Yeah, the one I'm most involved with, I suppose, is ARA, which stands for AIDS Research Institute. And the reason I got involved in it is because at the time when the AIDS epidemic started, I was in San Francisco, and we lost many of our associates to AIDS. And we started a fundraising drive which persists, which is still in existence today. Our major fundraising vehicle was called Passport, which was a fashion show we ran once a year, where we ran 2 major fashion shows that were visited by 4,000 people on 2 nights, and then took it to LA and raised, I think now consistently raising $2 million that goes to organizations that help people living with AIDS, and B, research, particularly research that's done at UCLA and at San Francisco, in the University of San Francisco, and UCSF. So that's been my extracurricular activity. There are others, but that was our main thrust, and I'm still somewhat involved with them today. Where we've funded a clinic in Africa, and one in Kenya, and one in KwaZulu. So I'm still somehow involved with that today, certainly in the arena of fundraising.
What do you think, you who were majoring in fashion design, after applying it to retailing and marketing, this is very important for you to know how to promote and present your designs. And here you have Mr. Steinberg, who can help you with that. So I would ask questions about that.
Well, I think, you know, when you talk about fashion design, first of all, it's a difficult field. I mean, I'm sure you all know that. And I think getting your ideas across and knowing who to take them to, developing your talents. I think some of the things that you can do is there's a whole nursery of entrepreneurial, creative people here who either open shops and that's why I'm so keen to advise you, those of you who don't do so on a regular basis, is to visit Soho. There are 3 or 4 streets where you can see stuff happening. Some are successful, some not. Sometimes you see something that's good and the next time it isn't there. But there's so much you can learn there about the process of design and how to bring it to the next level. So that's something that's unique, by the way, in my opinion, in New York. It's possible to find that in LA on Melrose Drive. It's possible to find it in San Francisco on Union Street, but nowhere is it as abundant as it is here in New York. So in that context, you're lucky to be here, and this is a wonderful place to study fashion, not only in the classroom, but in the field. And I know you're doing that. I've seen the list of places you go.
I'd like to, how many of you are New Yorkers? And how many of you are from other parts of the United States?
Well, about 50-50.
How many of you are from out of the country? So we have, I think it's good to see that. We have very few New Yorkers. Raise your hand again. Not too bad.
Can I answer any more of your questions? Yes.
Speak louder.
Yeah, I heard it. Berlin being influential. And Japan. Japan always has been. We've always gone to Japan. We've always gone to Tokyo, especially for junior fashion, by the way. They're wonderful. Many of the looks that you see evolved have come out of Japan, and especially in the area of juniors. Berlin is a little different. Berlin has evolved into a sort of a highly cosmopolitan city with lots of influences. It's sort of an island in the midst of East Germany, and people who've wanted to leave a more restrained kind of political life have found their way into Berlin, and it's manifested itself by tremendous creative thrust, and it's in all fields, whether it's food, whether it's restaurants, whether it's fashion, whether it's design, whether it's jewelry. Berlin is an interesting place to go to. If you have an opportunity, I urge you to try to go there.
Questions? No more questions? Stop.
Well,
We thank Mr. Steinberg very much.
thank you very much. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
If you have any questions, you can come and introduce yourself, and if any person, I'm sure Mr. Steinberg will be happy to help you. Am I right? I know you are. Okay.